Well, up, guys. This is episode 4 of the weekly lives that we are doing. This is the final episode we're doing to introduce the members of the Level Up Squad, at least the ones that have created this core squad of leadership. And we have a lot of exciting things in store. So today is the fourth and final intro to a Level Up Squad. Jesse Diaz
Yes.
and his beautiful wife. Rachel Diaz used to be Hikes.
Hikes.
Yes.
So, Marcus, let's take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Krista. My name is Marcus Medlock, and I am your host for this evening. We
Ooh.
have Mr. Jesse Diaz as our special guest tonight with his lovely wife, Rachel. He is hailing from what I understand the great state of Virginia.
Mhm.
Jesse, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you will, sir.
Okay, just a little bit. Tell me when to stop because I have a lot.
No, just keep
Um,
going.
so I guess I'll just start from kind of where I was born. I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. Um, just to kind of go back a little bit, my parents are from Mexico City. They moved to Nebraska. Well, my dad moved first in the late '60s. Eventually married my mom, and then started having kids in the '70s. And so I was number two, the middle child, the peacemaker, the bridge maker, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. Um,
How many
and
siblings if you're the middle?
so growing up, it was just me, my older brother, and my younger brother. When my dad got divorced, he got remarried, and so they had two more. So a half brother and half sister. So in total five. But I was in high school by the time the next one came around. So
Hmm.
grew up with with me and two other siblings. Um, so yeah, I want to make sure I remember everything I want to say. So because my parents were from Mexico City, I actually grew up speaking Spanish at home and English outside of the house. So technically, my first language was Spanish because that's what my parents spoke at home. My parents told me that I really started to kind of speak English and kind of take more of that in by watching shows like Sesame Street. And then, not sure if you guys are familiar with like the Montessori schools. That was a private school. And so I started going to that. I want to say 3 or 4 ish. Somewhere I was really young, because some of the very youngest, furthest memories that I have were from being in that school. And so and I can remember distinctly thinking like, wow, everyone's English is a lot better than mine. you know but it didn't take very long for me to really to speed up. I think that was kind of one of the reasons why my dad wanted me to be in that Montessori school, and he always wanted me to be in the best schools. Like he was always saying that stuff to us kids. And um so I grew up speaking Spanish at home, and then English outside the home. And then as I got older, I would always talk to my parents in Spanish. And then about middle school age or so, it was kind of half and half. I would talk to them half in English, half Spanish, here and there. And then by the time I got to high school, it was pretty much I just pretty much spoke to them in English. I think it was just, I don't know why, that's just the way it was. I mean, sometimes in Spanish, but it was more in English. Um, and then so I grew up going to public school, and then in high school, during my dad's divorce, I was a freshman, and I went to a Catholic high school. It was an all boys school. The very first time I went to an all boys school and
How
a
was
Catholic school all at once, as a 14, 15-year old. And so that was very different. But I will say that I really liked that experience just because it really made me focus on academics. And because that school, my dad, so it's called Creighton Prep. Um, and my dad just felt like that's the best school in Omaha. You boys are going to go to that school. And so, and I'm glad I went because I was surrounded by just a lot of very intelligent kids. And I think a lot of them grew up going to private school. And so all these kids around me had 4.0 GPAs. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to step up my game, you know? So I really excelled in, you know, in academics. And that's when I really, um, I started to run. So I ran cross country and track. It's kind of one of those things like once I was around in that environment that really called everybody to be just better for God and things like that. I just took a grab of that, you know, took a hold of that culture, you know. And so my focus was on God, and I you know, I grew up going to church and things like that, but I really didn't focus that much into it until I was in high school. And I think probably another reason too is that because of, you know, with my parents' divorce and things like that, um, as a teenager, like I had to grab onto something, and I chose to grab onto God. And so, because of all that, it really made me, I feel like a kind of a sharper person. And obviously, you know, growing into young adulthood and thinking about the future, and, you know, someday I'm going to leave this house and be on my own. That's when I really started to take those responsibilities, you know, and part of that responsibility was also financially because at that time it was after the my parents' divorce, and so you know finances
How
weren't, you know,
old were you
what's
when
that?
they divorced? How old were you?
When they
Um,
technically legally divorced, I was a freshman in high school, so I think I was
hmm,
about to turn 15.
Mhm.
Um,
that's hard.
yeah, so
Difficult.
yeah, but but again, I think I think it was just the mindset I had, you know, and I wanted to just um, to just be my best at that moment, you know. And so so yeah, that was a lot of my upbringing, and um, pretty much didn't really do a lot of traveling like Rachel did, you know, growing up. We did a little bit. We I mean, as far as in the country, I went to Kansas City quite a bit for to Worlds of Fun, and to Chicago a couple times. But I also grew up going to Mexico City twice a year, every single year. That's where my vacations were. So that's where all my Christmases were, like 90% of my Christmases were over there. Every summer we would go there as a family. We would pack the station wagon, and my dad would drive us and the kids, you know. Um, and so those were
From
my
Nebraska to Mexico City?
yeah.
How long is that drive?
It's about, well, if you were to drive straight through, which my dad did a couple times, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 days. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I mean that's all I knew, and that's how I grew up, and that was the norm for me, you know. So, and because at that point in the 80s, like we were really the only that I remember live like the family that were living in the States. Everybody else, my dad's side, my mom's side, they were still in Mexico, and so it just felt very different. Like, oh wow, like all these other kids, like they have to go down the street to meet grandma. I have to go to a completely different country, and it takes me like 3 days, you know. Um, so that's how I grew up, but that was normal for me, you know, and that's just the way I grew up, and so um, that's I can take a pause there. Do you have any other questions? That's kind of how I grew up until like age 18 or so.
Well, awesome, awesome, sir. I ran cross country too, so I got to say rock on there.
Hmm.
Um, so you and Rachel,
So did my dad.
how did you guys meet?
So we met on a singles Facebook dating group for 30 plus. So you have to be at least 30 years of age. Um, and so that's how I met Rachel. That's actually how I had met Krista, because a lot of us, you know, we have our little group that we started to meet, you know, people and things like that. And so that's how we met. And we actually met through that group, but there was also something special going on called it was called the meat market. So MEET.
Meet
Your
market.
face was like, ah,
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
Yep.
I
And like,
forgot about this.
and I don't. Was that the first one that they did?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the first and the only one.
The
that
first
they
and
did.
only one.
Yeah,
For
because there was
some,
only one, right?
yeah.
I forgot
Which I
about
don't remember
it.
all the details of why, but
Okay.
she was actually a moderator for that group.
I remember.
So, anyways, it was one. You know, it was basically something that were it would be an easy way to meet people, and so you had to like. Yeah, so this time, I think I don't remember. I think this time it was for the guys, and so they had if the girls wanted to meet a guy, you'd have to put your like your application or something like
Mhm.
that, and then I think we had to provide a couple of questions, and they provided a couple of questions, and then I had to come up with like this little profile intro with my picture and stuff like that, and so people would submit different, hey, I want to meet this person, and then every week I think they had somebody different.
Yeah.
It was for like the month, for that month, and so that's how it went, and then she was one of the people that that sent her application, and then it just kind
Wait,
of
you
went
guys
from
met
there.
through the meat market?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did.
I think we're the only.
This is the best story ever.
Yeah, I think we're the only meat market.
We're the only meat market.
I'm like, you guys are probably the only success story out of that.
Yeah, and we talked to Krista about that.
She's awesome.
Yeah, we would actually mention it in the group, like the people that joined after us, and like, what's that? And then we would explain it, like, oh, we need to still have that. And Krista was like, no, we don't.
Yeah, the other Krista, not me.
Yeah, not you, not the other
Yes,
Krista,
the other.
the founder of the
So
other.
this is, I'm just curious. So this is in the MEET market, right?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Marcus
not
is
the
like,
meat
what
that
did I
you eat.
miss?
Yeah, not MEAT. No.
Okay, gotcha.
But that's
Kind of,
it's
kind
like,
of
and this
pieced
is a
that together
Christian
after a
group.
while, but
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
so
that's
you
how-
all having been, I'm assuming married for a while now. What have you learned, or what has marriage brought you as far as life perspective? I guess if I can put it that way.
And it hasn't been that long.
Yeah. Go ahead, because you.
yeah. So we got married. We've been together. I'll just say we've been together for about a year. So I can speak for myself, and then I can pass the mic to Rachel. But for me, um, having been married before, my first marriage was 20 years, and so I kind of, and the two boys that I have, they're both in their mid 20s, and so um, for me, like I feel like you learn, a lot more, when you're a lot when you're older. The first time I got married, I was 23, and so and on top of that, I never had been in a relationship before, and so I was like really, really just wet behind the ears. Really didn't have any experience. Like I went on a lot of dates in the church. That's one thing I was very grateful about, and in the church I was a part of. Um, they were very proactive of, okay, take out the sisters on the weekends, like encourage them. And so I went on plenty of, they were called encouragement dates, and so I did do that, but never like a relationship. And so I feel like I feel like there's a lot of growth that a person has to do individually to be an effective spouse. And as a 23-year-old inexperienced guy, also that really kind of for the high school years, like I wasn't really around girls that much at all because I was busy. I was busy going to school, working on the weekends, running, um, doing homework because that high school gave us tons of homework. It just was something that was just kind of on pause. Like I eventually knew that I was going to go on dates and stuff like that, but for those high school years, like it wasn't until college that I really started to date and stuff like that. But again, dating is different than being in a relationship. It just is. Um, and so I feel like for me, um, I just feel like just overall marriage is something that has to be, obviously it's a covenant, it's a serious commitment. It's something that you have to be ready for. And if you're not ready, then you're not ready. People may want, like they may pressure you or they may say this and that. But if you know you're not ready, then you have to be ready, and so um but that's really my perspective, and I just feel like the person you marry is 100%, like, other than you know following God and, like, your moral compass, getting baptized and following, for us, for in my faith, making Jesus Lord. It's probably the most important decision you're going to make, because that is the person that you are going to be with, and that is the person that, the more you get to know each other, it really, I think God designed it so that way you are better together. And that's actually kind of our theme that I think your niece kind of
Mhm.
coined one time, and so we took it. We're like, yeah, we like that, because if you're not better together, then why are you together?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
True.
and I think sometimes people don't really, they may not really discover or experience that during their dating. I I mean, I found people that I'd ask them questions like, "Oh, so why'd you get married?" or whatever, and the responses sometimes I would get like, "Oh, I really didn't want to get married." I go, "So why'd you get married?" "Oh, because he asked me," and or because and or I've heard someone else say they got married, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we really didn't talk very much," and I'm like, "What's the point of getting married if you're not, there's a point, there's a purpose." So if
Mhm.
you completely miss that, then it's no wonder that a lot of, you know, it has to. That's what I guess I'll just say that I'll end that way, because otherwise I'll go on and on. If you don't do it with a God's understanding and God's way, then you're kind of rolling the dice. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with my first one. Like, um, it just was. We really didn't date very long, and then, um, and so then years later, the kids grew up, and then, you know, there's a lot of things can happen. I mean, I'm sure a lot of different stories from other people, but I feel like this time for me, this is different because Rachel is very, very committed, and I should for me, it was she really stood out, and I think that was one of the things that really kind of keyed into me, and being in that group, like, I mean, there's people all over the country in that group,
Mhm.
um, and kind of you just don't know if that if you're ever going to meet or whatever, and like we became really good friends at the beginning, but sometimes you're like, well, I mean, I have tons of friends, like, what's going to make this any different? But then the more I got to know her, and the more that I you know really learned more about her heart, and then when we started dating, knew even got to know her heart even more, and it's like, oh wow, like yeah, just really kind of learning more about how amazing she is. And so that's kind of, so yeah, just marrying the right person and just being ready. And I think even the timing of it too, I had just gotten out of another dating relationship at the time when I was stationed in California, and I had to go through several years of healing from my divorce, and so after years of that, and going to counseling, and then also kind of going through this other relationship, I finally got to a point where I was like, you know what, now I'm happy as a single man, you know. And it took me, I feel like there were some times where I did feel that, but at this moment I was like, you know what, I don't know if I'm ever going to get married again. I don't know when or where or whatever, but for now I'm just going to just make the best of it and enjoy my work, enjoy traveling, enjoying just being a father, and to my boys that are I mean, at the time, my oldest was in LA, so he was only, a few hours away because I was in California at the time. But that next month is when I joined A24. And then very shortly, I got to meet Rachel. So it just kind of, for me, it was just the right time. So, but I don't know if you want to add
Well, I
anything to
think
it.
the healing part that you mentioned, Jesse, is probably what is so critical of all of it, because the growth and healing, why do people get married young, um, or marry the wrong person, is because they want a relationship, first of all. more than they even realize how it could be better to be alone, because if you are whole coming in, you're fine
Mm-hmm.
alone. You are thriving and you are happy in your singleness at a point where then when you get in a relationship, then you don't pull on each other to validate the needs of your
Right.
own insecurities. And so when you can come together like that, it's a kingdom marriage where it exponentially multiplies the power
Mm-hmm.
of you guys together. So,
Right.
I see that in you guys. I would love to hear.
Yeah.
Rachy Rach, let's hear your perspective.
I think for me, it was just knowing that God was walking me through. I put in my name in the hat, didn't really know too much, except the profile. But he looked interesting enough to meet up with and such.
He
And
was
so
cute.
I was like, okay, he was cute, definitely. But I didn't have any, I was like, okay, God's leading, God's guiding me. I'm just going to do my own thing. Like Jesse said, I was just kind of doing my own thing. I was just walking through with God my journey. I was, making sure that I was ready for God's timing with marriage. And so, like you said, kind of Krista, going along with, you have to be knowing that no matter what, that you're content where you're at on the way to where God has you. It's just being and knowing that, I'm okay with where God has me. If God never, God knows my heart. He's the one that gave me those desires. And so I have to trust him that he's going to fulfill those desires in his timing. Even if I'm 80 years old, even if I was 80 and still waiting on him, it was a matter of just knowing that God was in control. And it wasn't about me focusing on myself. It was just about me, okay, God, your timing, because I can't do this on my own. All I know is that you and I are on a journey and you're guiding my steps. And so that's kind of something that I've learned too in marriage is that, you choose wisely, kind of like what Jesse said, you choose wisely because, that's one thing we pray over each and every day is just knowing that we're better with God's help, then we can be better together. And I love my niece is the one that, because of my mom, she coined it. She's like, we're better together. And I was like, that's perfect because Jesse and I have learned to become better together as we are growing closer to God first, because it's the triangle effect, is that
Mhm.
we have to make sure that we're growing closer to God and then God will draw us closer to him. So, because we can't do this marriage, we can't do it without it because it'd be impossible. But knowing that God is at the center, that we can actually enjoy learning and growing and sharpening each other, learning from each other, and having a great relationship because of, he's becoming my best friend, somebody that I'm excited to spend an adventure with and do life with on a daily basis and a regular basis, many adventures. We've been very blessed to travel a lot. He's, given me some great trips and experiences of all over the United States. It's kind of fun.
Well,
We're in a
East Coast.
East Coast. Yes, we're kind of in a little competition to have some fun, seeing how many states we can see
Competition.
together or how many states we can check off our bucket list, and it's just fun to be able
Nice,
to enjoy life, hanging
That's
out with,
fun.
nice, nice.
my best friend.
If I can
Yeah.
add something really important to that, you kind of going back a little bit to Marcus's question, like what have I learned? Um, I really feel like I learned just how, and I want to make sure I say this correctly because I don't want to dismiss people's struggles because everyone's struggles is it's unique to them, because no one's perfect. But I will say that Rachel is unique, I think, because learning more about her past, I was just like, wow, like so, and I won't get into details, but I was like, wow, you never experienced this, and you never did this, and you stayed away from this, and she's like, yeah, yeah, yes. And I was like, wow, Rachel, you are rare because I've talked to many women over the years, and they have been a victim of this. They have struggled with this. They've been through this. And not to say, that's what I'm saying, just as a caveat, not to say that you can't overcome those things, because with God you can overcome. But when you haven't been so, I'll just say it this way, tainted from the world,
Hmm.
you have someone like Rachel. And I honestly didn't like, in the back of my mind, I was like, gosh, I don't know if I'm ever gonna get married, but if I do, I kind of want this kind of person.
Like a cynic when you're
They probably
changing
don't
the
exist. This person probably doesn't exist. And then then Rachel rolls around. I was like, what? And there's other things too that are just kind of specific to her, which they're a little personal. But I was like, wow, Rachel, you are. That's why I would say that people say, oh, that person's the gem, or this person is a heart of they have a heart of gold. It's like no, but for her, it's not just a metaphor. Like it is like there are not many people like Rachel. There just aren't. And I feel like I was thinking about that today too, and um, I was going throughout my day, like if I were to speak to a guy, it's kind of like when you get a car, it can look really nice on the outside. It can have all these bells and whistles and things like that. But if it has a crappy motor or engine, you're not going to go very far at all, you know? And that is kind of what I've seen in different relationships. It's like, I want the real thing, you know? And there are some things that I'm not saying that when we got together, it's like whenever you bring two people together, it is bringing, two people from different backgrounds. Our backgrounds are there's a lot of there's some similarities, but there's also some differences, and we had to work through those differences through counseling, through church and stuff like that. And on top of that, obviously, men and women are different in the ways our brains are wired. But
Yes.
I feel like wow, like I just feel like this is the type of mentorship that a lot of us just don't get. Like our parents and our grandparents, they should be giving this to us just across the
Yes.
board or through church or through somebody.
Mhm.
But a lot of us just don't have that. Not to say that our parents weren't bad or that they were trying to hurt us or they were intentionally, but when you start when you start to really learn about what makes a relationship work and a marriage strong, and you're right, you start reading these different books, and like now we have podcasts and all these different things now that we didn't have 30 years ago. It's like if you really want to learn, like I kind of feel like there's no excuse. There's so much information out there now. But how many
Yeah.
of our parents and our grandparents had that? And I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of it back in the day, they probably had a little bit more. I'm not going to say that. I'm just saying if you came from a strong family and you came from a strong unit, that stuff will get passed because you would have seen your parents and your grandparents married and together and been through all the thick and thin. Now it's so easy to leave your partner, to leave your spouse,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to pick up your phone, join an app, whether you're married or not, doesn't matter. You have it's like people have said, it's kind of like shopping. You can pick somebody from a different part of the world now, where back in the day it was only your community. So we just live in a different technology world now, and I just feel like you know from what I understand from the 5-ish years that I was like single, there's people that don't want to get married. There's people that are afraid of commitment and of marriage, and I don't know if it's the people before us that just didn't make it and they're afraid. I don't know. Like, I know when I was working here at Langley, I would ask some of the young guys, like, hey, they're like 20, 21 years old. And I asked a little bit because, sometimes when you're working night shift, it's kind of slow. So we were just talking and stuff. And they're like, yeah, a lot of people our age, like, what's the point of getting married? You know,
Mhm.
Right.
they don't see the point. There's not that, you know, so it's just different. But like I was telling somebody at our life group the other day, they've been married, what, 50, 40 years? That couple? Yeah, 45 years. Um, they were married 2 years, got divorced, and then like a year or so later, they got, remarried. And they've been together for like 45 years. And I told them, you guys are an encouragement because you guys
Absolutely.
are going to be even more rare, you know, as time
Mhm.
goes on, because I think ultimately that's what we want and that's what we desire. But I feel like if we don't see it, then it's kind of like we don't believe it. And then if you're not around it, then it's like, well, it's probably not even a thing anymore. I don't know. But that's
Yeah,
just
I
kind of
think it has
that's
to
my
be
thought.
modeled first for us to even believe in good relationships and know that they're possible. Because if you know it's possible, you've seen it. No one can change your mind with their own story and statistics because you already know. You've seen good relationships, you've seen good marriages, you've seen brokenness, pain to purpose and reconciliation. But there's a lot of broken families in a way that I know so many people that can't even name one person, one relationship that they would say is a healthy one, is a good one. So if people don't have that example, it's hard to fight through the bad because you don't even know what good could look like. And unless you have that example in your life and healthy people, you don't even understand how, the reason to not marry the wrong person or be with the wrong person is because
Yeah.
if you're perfectly fine on your own, then coming together with someone else will fill the gaps
Mhm.
together to create something stronger. It's not a seeking a validation to fill the gaps for own personal needs. It's
Mhm.
we're whole and happy and content
Yeah.
in what we're doing and we're thriving. Now, if we're a good alignment, exponentially multiplying power.
Mhm.
That's the only reason to get married. Otherwise, you diminish the potential of, you know, a life alone that's happy and content and single.
Yeah.
And a lot
And
of
I think,
people don't know content,
yeah.
and single.
And I think that's why I met Rachel when I did, just because like, oh, I forgot, that's the thing I was gonna say. Um, because like I was saying before, like when I felt like I got to this point of like, you know what, I'm good as a single. If I get married, great. If I don't, great. I don't care. I'm just gonna have fun. Like I'm just gonna
Hmm.
keep. And then I started to really like really push the boundaries for myself. I'm like, okay, because having been married before and going through a divorce is probably the worst thing that you can go through. It's like you feel like like you're literally dying, you know. And there were days, and this happened like around 2020 when the whole world was going through COVID. It's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
Yeah.
is
Of all
Jesus
times to
even
happen.
back right now? It's like,
Oh boy.
and so that was, I mean, that's a whole episode right there. Is just having to like get out of the pit. I felt like I was in a pit, and you had to work and climb out of that, and like I had to like rediscover who is Jesse now, not married anymore. Um, my boys were just out of my youngest boy. He moved out like 2 weeks before COVID hit. So I was living by myself for the first time, single for the first time, and now COVID's happening. I can't even go to work because they're saying, "Oh, just work from home." Come to work 3 times a week. No, 2 what? No, 1. It's like it kept changing, as those weeks went on.
Hmm.
And I was just like, "Wow, this is very different." It's like this world is going upside down in more ways than
Oh,
one.
new world.
Yeah. And so I had to like really like rediscover, okay, so who's Jesse again? You're
It's
not.
interesting the time frame you're talking about because Marcus
Yeah.
and I have talked about the same thing, like a shift around 20
Yeah.
2020 and 2021 in our lives
Yeah, and I
leading
and I
up
kind of
to this.
and I know like I think I had sent you the scripture that talks about how God works through everything. And even though COVID was, yeah, technically it wasn't like, a nice thing, like God can still work through that. Cause I feel like a lot of people had their own stories of a reset, or that's when they really, they had something challenging going on because of COVID. And so God can work through those difficult challenges. That's why I mentioned to you like the cross. Like the cross was an instrument of death, but God used it to save us, you know? And I feel like those are the lessons that I think God is trying to tell his children, like in some small or big ways, like, okay, you are not in control. you know, I made you, and what are you without me? You know, and I feel like if I didn't have the relationship I had with God, what would have held me? You know, because there were days back in like in 2019, 2020. I'm like, I was like questioning, like wow, like do I still want to be here? You know,
Hmm.
is it still worth being alive? Like I had those thoughts, you know, and I'm like,
What's
yes, it
next?
is. You know, it's like this will pass. It's like those scriptures that you hear all growing up. Now these scriptures become real. Like the scriptures, like things like, hey, this too will pass.
This
And
too shall pass.
all those things started to really come, for real to you. And so that's when I really started to rediscover myself, and I really wanted to, okay, how, if I'm never going to get married again, and even if I did, like, what is Jesse? Like, who am I? Am I just the father? Am I just the husband? Am I just the coworker? Because all that stuff was taken away.
Hmm.
Like, well, I'm a Jesus follower. Okay, so what does he do? Let's get back to the basics. Well, he loved people. He cared for people. He did this and that. And so I started to join these different groups like Common Grounds, which I'm a moderator for, but it's about how can I be a light? How can I reflect God's light? Whether I'm in my room, whether I'm at work, whether I'm at home, like wherever I'm at, I don't care, God. I just want to be able to do what I can with what I have. And those are the lessons that I had to really learn and grasp and really take a hold of. And so, now years later, here I am in the state of Virginia, out of all states, married, turned 50. I'm a grandpa now. It's like all these different things. It's like, wow, like my life is completely different than it was 5 years ago when I'm just laying in my bed, just wondering if life's even worth it. It's like you just never know. You never know where life is going to take you, but sometimes you may not see it with your eyes, but if you know deep down what the truth is, and if you know deep down, um and you ask God, God will show you, you know because he showed it to me, and here I am, just like, wow. I sit here, I'm like, man, wow, really. It's just amazing. So it gives me hope, and it gives me faith, like, if God can do this to me, he can do this to anybody. And
Hmm.
so it calls me even higher. How can I be a blessing to others? And so that's when we started thinking about, can we have like a blessing, some sort of blessing giving type of ministry where we can like keep our eyes and ears open if people are in need, and there's we know some people, that have been living in need, whether it's financial need, whether it's emotional need, and sometimes it's like you just let them know, like, oh, did you know that your community actually has this service, or did you know that this, we helped somebody with, they had like a medical bill, and we contacted one of your friends, Angela, Snellenberger,
Mhm.
because she's in the medical field, and she was like, yeah, like, I think you can go to the what was the exact
The
advice? Do you
insurance
remember?
company. It was the insurance company. Work with them.
Okay. Anyways, they worked through the insurance company, and they were able to help her with like, so like,
Reducing the
yeah,
bills.
to reduce the bill or something. So
Oh
just
my
little things
God.
like that, or going through your church, if you're like, if you're, struggling financially, churches, you don't have to be part of the church, but you can be like, hey, I'm low income, I'm struggling, can you help? And sometimes people don't know about these things, and as we're talking about that now, like, even right now with the government shutdown and people coming out of, losing SNAP benefits and things like that, it's like,
Hmm.
there are needs out there. And so knowing and being a person that was in need, not financial need, but just, when you feel like you're poor inside,
Hmm.
that there are ways to be rich towards somebody, whether it's giving them something, whether it's a hug, whether it's just, acknowledging them. It could be financial. Um, But those were the thoughts that I was starting to have even before I met Rachel. Is like, how can I be a light? Because when the day comes when we leave this earth, I want to be able to look back and feel like, yeah, Jesse was a woman, married or not. And so I was starting to have these thoughts. And so that's another thing that helped me connect with her, because we have a lot of the same goals, you know. And it was very amazing to see that Rachel, like, wow, like you want to help people, and you want to, like, you come from a strong, family, and like, the Old Testament better than me, and like, this and that. Like, wow, like I could use someone like you, on my team. Those are the thoughts I had. It's like it just kind of worked out. But how stupid of me was, like, when we first met, I was kind of like, oh, she doesn't know the '80s. Like, she didn't grow up like watching TV. Obviously, I don't have anything about being homeschooled because my kids are homeschooled. But at first, I'll be honest, I was kind of a turnoff. I was like, she doesn't know these '80s songs. She doesn't know these shows,
Yeah,
and
being a homeschooled kid is a total turnoff for a lot of people. I'll
and
kick
so that,
herself.
It's true.
Ruined the school.
but see,
I didn't watch TV.
but that alone wasn't the turnoff. It was the fact, because I'm a big '80s person, and
Yeah, you
she
can't
didn't,
share in the nostalgia.
yeah, she didn't. And I was like, oh my gosh, nope, friend zone.
I know how this feels because I watch all
Yeah,
the people like with the excitement of the nostalgia, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know what they're talking about.
but yeah, that's why it is important to, like, for those that are listening and going on dates, like, don't judge a book by their cover. Like, once you get to
Mhm.
know them, and you're like, if that, and that's really kind of, if I'll call it, the worst thing. Everything else is like, she's just amazing. And so I took it upon as, okay, maybe God, maybe you just assigned me to her so I can be the teacher of the 80s. So how honored am I
My professor.
to teach
You
you
get to
this?
introduce her to all the fun stuff she hasn't
Exactly,
like
exactly.
felt
So
yet.
I gotta watch these movies and watch these videos and songs again. Okay, good, I'll do it. So it's just a perspective. It's just a perspective. Like,
Yeah.
don't be like, oh well, this person, like, they don't have this, because I, even being in in that, I'll just say, that group. Sometimes people have this long list of, oh, you're not perfect, and you're not this, and you're not that. Well, like, okay, well, have you looked in the mirror? It's like, so those are the things I've kind of really, I know I'm babbling, but that's kind of what I've just really have enjoyed being married and
I have a
choosing my.
question for Rachel.
Yes.
Yes.
So Rachel, I would love to hear like what your favorite thing or your impression of Jesse is, that drew you to him. And as far as me and Level Up and what we're doing, the thing that, for the audience listening, the thing that led Jesse and I to become working together, and we met through Rachel and became friends. And so when we first met, there's something about you that I describe my dad in the same way as, and it's like a strength of presence and a strength of character that is just foundational, because you don't, my sister said this about my dad once, and it's so true, and I would say it about you as well, Jesse. She said our dad didn't tell us how to live, he just lived and he let us watch. And I see that in your life, Jesse, in the way that you conduct yourself, in the way that you treat people. And there's a strength in knowing who you are, knowing your own identity, and knowing what you live for. God, your wife, church, in that order. God, family, and church, and it leads to not questioning everything like so many of us fall tendency to do. I'm a worrywart, and there's a strength and presence and character that you have that reminds me very much of my dad. And my dad, as the leader of our family, I look back on those foundational things of the presence and the conversation, not being triggered or angry, but knowing what he believed and going to work every day and showing faithfulness without saying, be faithful and go to work and do your, he did it. And then retired 3 years early because he didn't take sick days, basically,
Mhm.
all my life. And so, Jesse, I see a lot in you as far as your character and your quiet presence of strength. That is just really foundational to what I want to do with Level Up. So I'm curious to know, Rachel, as far as the romantic relationship side of things, what is it that is your favorite thing, or maybe initially spoke to you before even knowing him?
Well, he was. I always told my it was, he was speaking about dream lists, and I was like, my one dream list was tall, dark, and handsome, and he fit those characters.
That's mine too.
Yes, he fit it. He's taller than I am. He's dark and he's handsome. So
Oh, I
those are
love
the
it.
physical
Oh,
characteristics that I always
very
wanted in my husband.
No.
So, but no, he when we first started talking, I noticed that he had such a heart for God. Like, I used to joke, sometimes my nickname for him is the professor, because he's always teaching me something. He's always researching. I know we joke about it. He's my personal planner. He plans all of our excursions for us. Literally, he lists them out in a good list. And I used to think,
I
oh, that's
love
a lot.
that.
But now I'm very blessed. I'm like, okay, he's very much a blessing to be able to do that. I'm like, keep it up, babe. Keep it up. So, I mean, that is one thing that I do love, and I appreciated that about him even more so. And I've grown to even love it even more now, even as after, I've experienced it more so now being married to him and being in that close relationship with him too, just because as a friend, I saw it and I was like, wow, this guy really, I admire that he knows his stuff. Like, he's not just there to babble and give something. He's going to give you truth. He's going to give you full out, details, and really knowing his aspect or his opinion. He's done the research to figure it out. He's not going to just give you, an answer and just kind of blow some stuff. He's going to actually, just blow some words out there, put them out there, but he's going to give you full out, everything that he's done his research on. And that was one thing I admired, is he made me step up my game too, to understand more of the Bible. He's like, well, did you know this part? And I'm like, oh, I guess I could go back and read that again and make sure I
I
understand,
totally
because he
don't
was
remember
always,
that story.
exactly, he was always challenging me to become better, and just making sure I understood, my walk with God, why I believed, why the depth that I believed something. That was a big thing for me. He was like, well, why do you believe that? He would challenge me. And that's one thing I do admire. Oh, well, praying for those people in Jesus'
Yeah,
name.
me too. Yeah.
But just knowing that he was challenging me to become better, and knowing why I believed what I believe. And that was important to me. And that really struck me as something that I very much admire about him, is he really challenged me and made me step up to my game of going, okay. So that was one thing.
And if I can piggyback off that, because I know we don't have that much time, but and it kind of goes a little bit tied into what the intro, but I feel like we're kind of I feel like sometimes a product of what we were raised with and what we have gone through. And like, if I can go back, I mentioned, my parents getting divorced. They both went to different churches. My dad went to a
Mhm.
Catholic. A lot of my dad's side was Catholic, and a lot of my mom's side eventually were Catholic, but then switched to Jehovah's Witness. And so I grew up in a family where, from very little, as far as I can remember, they both went to different churches, but yet they both claimed, well, I'm in God's church, and they both had their reasons, they both had their narratives, they both had their beliefs, and here I am growing up, all the way to high school. And, up until I went to college, my assessment to that point was like, well, yes, I believe in the Bible and I believe in Jesus, but as far as the churches, everybody's got their own interpretation. Everyone's got their own whatever. And this is even with me just having gone to Catholic church, or to Catholic church, and also to a Catholic school. They didn't teach us the Bible in Catholic school. You know, I mean, there might have been some classes that would have some verses here and there. We learned church history or learned Catholic sacraments, or we did
The
retreats.
memorization stuff.
We did different things, but as far as actually like opening up the Bible and like reading it, I didn't do that until I went to college. And so I feel like I was a product of not having any Bible context. And so I was able to just, you know, I don't know. There's just that could be a whole nother episode, but I'll just say I have gone to different churches. I've been a member of different churches. We're part of a non-denominational church right now that has some Baptist roots, but they don't consider themselves Baptist. But I've been part of a Christian church. I've been part of a Church of Christ. I've been. Oh, that's the thing I was going to say too. Is like when I grew up in Nebraska, but after September 11th, I joined the Air Force, and so I was stationed in Germany for 4 years. That was my first duty station. I was in Fort um, um, Herbert Field, Florida. I was there for a year. I was in McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas for 12, Beale Air Force Base in California for 2, and then here in Langley, Virginia for 1. And so I was deployed to the desert once. I've been to, and with all the traveling and just seeing different people, and obviously growing up going to Mexico, I love seeing how other places and other people function, how different languages, obviously different foods, different cultures. Um, and I think it's very important, to know the world around you, because the world is really not that big. I heard one time someone to say, like, if you were to take every single person in the world, I think from what I remember, they could all fit in the state of Texas, because there is so much empty land out there.
Yeah.
There is so much, even in a city. You just drive around, so much empty. There's just a lot of empty land. Whether it's farmland, whether it's desert land, it doesn't matter. But if you were to take every single person in the world, they could fit in just a one spot. And I believe that there's so much empty land, even in this country. There's so much empty land, so much empty land. But because of the way I grew up, the situations I grew up with my parents, being part of different churches, being in the military, having so many different examples in front of me of good leaders, bad leaders, being in leadership positions, have traveled, being in Germany, having traveled in Europe. I feel like I've been through so many different things, and now I never have been part of politics. I never was a big political person. I never was. It was cool to watch the debates and stuff like that growing up. Especially, I think in high school is when I really started paying attention to that. But again, never really like super super big. But then I feel like as I got older, and being in the military, there's people around you always having discussions about this thing, this past, and this president, this and that. So I'm kind of always around it. But then now, I think that's one of the reasons why through Level Up we decided to kind of have, we're still kind of playing around with some ideas. It's still kind of in the formation phases, but to have like a, a Zoom type of situation where we have people that are just willing to talk. Because from what I found out is that sometimes in social media, yes, it is very easy to post something, put your 2 cents in, and then just leave. There's not real discussion. And what people always tell you, what makes a good relationship, what makes a good marriage is communication. But
Mhm.
it's not just speaking. You also have to listen, and you also have to take note, and you have to grow. And with all this, whether it's the political climate or whether it's a spiritual climate where different denominations are teaching different things, um, if you don't have that humility that it takes, and I feel like that's been a big word that has just kind of surfaced over the years, whether it's been in my military circles, family circles, political circles, spiritual circles. When somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I have all the answers, I know everything," then it just, at first it's like, okay, that sounds cool. Like, okay, that's great. Like, a lot of that sounded cool when I was in my 20s, because we all desire to have those answers. Like, we want to have that definite, oh, I belong to this. I want to be
Mhm.
part of a group. We all want to be part of that winning group. We don't want to be part of the losing group. I mean, who does? But but what is that winning group? You know, if it's to follow Jesus, then okay, well, what's he about? He's about humility. He's about grace. He's about, yes, he's about obedience, but it's like he's a perfect parent. He's the perfect father. You know, he will give you those boundaries, and if you pass those boundaries, there will be consequences, but he will love you through it. And I think it's so easy for people, whether in politics or in church circles, it's like, you know, I don't want to be a Pharisee. You know,
Mhm.
I don't want to have the Bible memorized and have all these different things, but yet have Jesus call me out because I'm, you know, a whitewashed tomb. You know, that's what he would call, like, the people that hated Jesus were the religious people. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that's what we have going on right now. It's kind of a big mixing pot of different things. And now you got, you know, now we have Christians in our country that, you know, there are some that say, oh, you know, I hate this president. Oh, I love this president. They're like,
Mhm.
how can you love this president if, you know, and then there's all of this confusion and all this, this narrative that, you know, what narrative are we following? That's another big word that kind of has surfaced over the years is, what do we believe in? Who do we believe in? You
Mhm.
know, what narrative are we following? And I feel like if we don't um, try at least to attempt to answer those questions, then we sitting in the seat of, oh, I have all the answers, I'm right, you're wrong, or are we sitting in the seat of, you know, I know what I know, but I'm willing to be wrong because I'm imperfect.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want to treat my wife in that way of like, you know, I don't have all the answers. Like we work together. We're a team. You know, I never want her to feel like that I, you know, I'm better or I know more or things like that. This
Yeah.
marriage is going to be something that God brings together and holds together. And so I don't know. Those are kind of the things, and I really appreciate just being in this format so we can talk and, like, you know, your dream of level up. Like, I feel like that title is good. Like, we do want to level up in some way or form or fashion. God will take care of the details, but we all should level up, grow up, mature, however you want to say it, but
Look up.
look up. Yeah. But we do want to be better. So that way, when we look back on our last day, we could be like, you know what? Yeah, I did my best. I wasn't perfect, but I loved my wife the best, my kids, my community, my family, and yes, I leveled up. Peace out. You know, it's like that's kind of
Well,
where.
I'm super excited for the, what we're doing. And Marcus, you can announce it to the audience on one of the future lives as we figure it all out. But I think creating a safe space for people to be able to come and talk about these things is super exciting. So,
Mhm.
yeah, Jesse's in my new venture. And thank you guys for being here today, by the way. You should impart some piece of advice or wisdom, each of you, if you have a favorite quote and
Yes,
or
I was just
advice
pulling
or
that up.
scripture or anything before we end.
I will let the ladies go first.
Aww.
One of my favorite scriptures is, and this is one thing I actually prayed over him. Actually, during our time, I was like, "Okay, God, you are in complete control of the situation." And I prayed the scripture, though it's from Proverbs 21. Um, Proverbs 21. It says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, like the rivers of water. He turns it whichever way he wishes." And I was praying it over my situation with him. I said, okay, God, you've got to turn his heart. If I'm in the wrong, if he's not supposed to date me, then you need to turn my heart. If not, you're going to turn his heart towards me because I'm trusting you. You're my source, God. And it's something that I had to rely on. And so that is something that, that was one of my scriptures that I really held on to. And then I'm going to tag on one of my favorite quotes by my mentor. Talking is sharing, listening is caring, by Orrin Woodward. And that kind of goes along with what he said, is just talking is good, but when you actually are listening, you're actually caring for someone by hearing what they have to say. So
What's the who wrote that?
Orrin Woodward, Orrin Woodward.
I love that.
Mhm.
Jesse?
Well, I have a scripture to share, and since and this has been my favorite scripture for a while, and because I'm a very much
Researcher.
a bottom line kind of kind of guy, I think that's why I like the scripture. But it's Matthew 22, and I'll just kind of get to the meat and the potatoes of it. You shall. Uh, Someone asked a question to test him, teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend on all the law and the prophets. And I like that because it's like when I read that for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, that pretty sums it up right there, you know? Um, and I feel like that is the heart of God, is to love God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. And that's not easy to do, you know, and we should strive to discover what that means. And I think as we go on this adventure to discover what that means, I think it'll take us closer to the heart of God and a way of the heart of a Pharisee, you know. And the reason I keep bringing this up is because you know I've been in churches and I've been in conversations where it's kind of like, wow, like I used to sound like that. Sometimes I do sound like that, and I don't want to be like that. I want to see God. I want to see the world and people through the eyes of God, and that's been my prayer for the past, I want to say, year or two, because it can be so. I think I love social media. I love TV. I love different things and news to a point. But a lot of times there's a lot of voices that we listen
Mhm.
to and it can
Mhm.
be clouded, you know. And I just want to see and hear God, and I want to see people the way that God sees his children, you know. And I feel like this is, to me, it's like someone keeps asking me like, "Oh, so how does it feel to be a grandpa now?" You know, as I've been a grandpa for what, 2 weeks now. It's kind of like, wow, it's like now one of my kids has a kid, and it calls me higher because I think of my
Mhm.
grandpa, you know,
Mhm.
uh, Air Force officer in Mexico, and just physically fit, and just
Mhm.
was married for, gosh, 60 plus years. I have this high view of my grandpa, and my middle name is his first name, and so it's kind of like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, now
it's
I'm in that
responsibility.
seat. It's like it's like, wow. But yeah, it's just God wants us to experience these blessings, these fruits, you know, and they're
Mhm.
out there for us. And we can't pretend to cheat God. There's no cheat code. Like, we have to, if we really want to know God and experience God the way that He wants us to, is there's got to be that surrender and to follow His narrative and His following. So,
Well, and if you truly love God, you will truly love people.
Mhm.
Amen.
Yep.
All right. And with that, guys, I first of all apologize to you because I had to put myself on mute in case another fire truck went by.
No,
Um,
that's because you're
and
on
also,
fire, Marcus. You're on
no,
fire.
we were on, yeah,
That's
we
what the
were,
light.
I'm a blaze over here.
Exactly.
But we did go a
That's what
few
this
minutes
is for.
over.
The chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just want to say to Jesse and Racer that we greatly appreciate you guys. Couldn't
Mhm.
help as we close out. I was thinking about the scripture in Genesis 2:24 where it says the two shall become one flesh. And I think in that scripture, God is actually telling us that um, marriage is not nearly as much about the destination as it is the process, the journey.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
Mm.
That's true. I
we
agree.
thank you guys so very much. You guys have a beautiful story. You're beautiful people. And we were glad to have you as guests on Level Up.
All
And we're
right.
glad to have you
We'll see you guys
going
next week.
forward.
Okay. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Bye.
All of you guys out there, I am Marcus. That is Krista. We thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week. Same bat